The lights dimmed gradually, not enough to command silence, just enough to signal that another audition was about to begin. The audience was still buzzing from the act before, people shifting in their seats, whispering, checking phones. From the side of the stage, a young Filipino man stepped forward, shoulders slightly hunched, as if he were trying to make himself smaller. He wore a simple outfit, nothing flashy, nothing designed to impress. The massive AGT stage seemed to swallow him whole as he walked toward the center, the spotlight finding him almost reluctantly. Simon Cowell glanced down at his notes, then up at the contestant, his expression neutral, bordering on bored. He had seen thousands of singers claim inspiration from legends. Most of them crumbled under the weight of comparison. "Tell us your name," Simon said. The young man answered quietly, his accent soft but clear. His voice trembled, not with weakness, but with contained emotion. When asked where he was from, he mentioned the Philippines, and a ripple of polite applause passed through the crowd. Then came the question that always mattered most. "What will you be singing today?" For a split second, the young man hesitated. He swallowed, took a breath, and said, "An Elvis Presley song." The reaction was instant. A few people chuckled, others exchanged looks that said, "Here we go again." Elvis was sacred ground. Too many had tried and failed, turning timeless magic into karaoke disaster. One judge raised an eyebrow. Simon leaned back slightly, his face unreadable, but the skepticism was there. The music cue was given. A slow, familiar introduction floated through the theater, gentle, almost fragile. The young man closed his eyes before singing, as if grounding himself. In that brief silence before his first note, memories rushed through him. Singing quietly in a cramped home, neighbors banging on walls, family members telling him to keep going even when the world felt deaf. He tightened his grip on the microphone, not out of fear, but out of need. Then he sang. The first note didn't shout. It didn't show off. It simply existed, rich, warm, impossibly controlled. The chatter in the audience died instantly, as if someone had turned a dial. Heads snapped up. People who had been leaning back now leaned forward. There was something haunting in that voice, something older than his years. It carried the echo of Elvis, yes, but also the weight of a life shaped by struggle, distance, and unspoken dreams. As the melody unfolded, his confidence grew. His posture straightened. The nervous young man from seconds ago vanished, replaced by a performer who knew exactly where he was and why he was there. Each lyric was delivered with care, not copied, not forced. He wasn't pretending to be Elvis, he was honoring him. The tone, the phrasing, the subtle ache in his voice felt authentic, earned. Simon's pen stopped moving. He slowly raised his head, eyes fixed on the stage. His expression shifted, not dramatically, but unmistakably. Surprise crept in, followed by focus. This wasn't what he expected. One judge's mouth fell slightly open. Another blinked hard, as if making sure what they were hearing was real. The young man opened his eyes mid-verse and looked out into the darkness beyond the lights. He couldn't see faces clearly, but he could feel the change. The room was holding its breath. That realization sent a quiet surge of courage through him. His voice deepened, gaining texture and emotion, as if every note was pulled straight from his chest. By the time he reached the end of the opening section, the audition had transformed. This was no longer just another hopeful singer on a famous stage. It was the beginning of a moment, one of those rare ones where time slows, doubt disappears. And everyone realizes they're witnessing something special. The song continued, and with each passing second, the air inside the theater grew heavier, charged with emotion. His voice no longer sounded like a performance meant to impress judges, it felt like a confession unfolding in real time. The notes flowed smoothly, carrying a deep ache that wrapped itself around the audience. He didn't rush the lyrics. He let them breathe, stretching certain words just enough to make them linger in the heart before gently releasing them. As he moved into the next verse, his eyes closed again, not from nerves this time, but from immersion. It was as if the world beyond the stage had disappeared, leaving only the music and the memories fueling it. Every subtle rise and fall of his voice revealed discipline and instinct, a rare balance that singers spend lifetimes chasing. The judges leaned forward almost in unison. Even those known for restraint could not hide their growing fascination. The audience was completely silent now, not the restless quiet of boredom, but the reverent stillness of people afraid to break the spell. A woman in the front row pressed her hand to her chest, her eyes glistening. Somewhere in the crowd, a soft sob escaped, quickly swallowed by the music. His voice seemed to reach places people didn't expect to be touched, awakening old memories, lost loves, and forgotten hopes. As the melody climbed, he allowed a controlled rasp to enter his tone, a raw edge that gave the song new life. It wasn't imitation, it was interpretation. The power of Elvis was there, but filtered through his own story, through nights of doubt, long hours of practice, and the quiet resilience of believing in a dream no one else could see. The contrast between strength and vulnerability in his delivery made the performance impossible to look away from. Simon Cowell's reaction changed subtly but significantly. His posture shifted, arms uncrossing, chin lifting. He wasn't just listening, he was studying. The skepticism that had once guarded his expression dissolved, replaced by something closer to disbelief. He had heard this song countless times, but never quite like this. A small shake of his head betrayed his thoughts. This shouldn't be happening, but it is. The music swelled, and the singer followed it fearlessly, pushing into higher notes with precision and control. His voice soared, filling the vast theater without losing warmth. The sound wrapped around the audience like a wave, lifting them with it. A judge's eyes brimmed with tears. Another smiled unconsciously, caught off guard by the emotional pull. The camera panned across the crowd, capturing faces frozen in awe. He took a brief breath before the bridge, his chest rising and falling, grounding himself for what came next. This was the part that demanded everything. His grip tightened on the microphone as he leaned slightly forward, pouring every remaining ounce of emotion into the lyrics. The pain in his voice sharpened, not breaking, but bending beautifully under the weight of feeling. It felt honest, almost too honest for a stage built on spectacle. The audience responded without sound, yet with full presence. You could sense hundreds of hearts beating in rhythm with the song. Time seemed to stretch, seconds expanding into something larger, something unforgettable. The singer's face reflected the journey of the moment, focus, vulnerability, courage, all layered together in a way that felt deeply human. As the final notes of the verse echoed, hanging in the air like a held breath, the room remained still. No applause came yet, no cheers broke through. Everyone was waiting, suspended in that fragile space between anticipation and release, knowing instinctively that the most powerful moment was still to come. The final section of the song arrived quietly, almost cautiously, as if it understood the weight of everything that had come before. The music softened, giving his voice room to stand alone. He lowered the microphone just slightly, trusting the natural strength of his tone. The first line of the ending verse emerged gentle and steady, but beneath it trembled an emotion so raw it felt exposed. This was no longer about technique or range. This was about truth. He opened his eyes and looked straight ahead, no longer lost inside himself but fully present with the audience. The lights reflected off his eyes, which glistened with unshed tears. Each word landed with intention, shaped by lived experience rather than rehearsal. The story in the song, longing, regret, hope, felt inseparable from his own. It was as if he had been waiting his entire life to say these words out loud, and this stage had finally given him permission. As the music built toward its final rise, he took a deep breath that seemed to draw energy from the room itself. The last high notes approached, dangerous territory where many singers falter. He didn't force them. Instead, he let them unfold naturally, his voice lifting and expanding with a quiet power that sent chills through the crowd. The sound was pure, unwavering, and filled with aching beauty. Somewhere in the audience, someone whispered, "Oh my God," barely audible but deeply felt. The final note rang out, strong and sustained, echoing through the theater before slowly fading into silence. For a brief moment, no one moved. No one clapped. No one breathed. The kind of silence that followed was rare, the kind that only comes when people are stunned into stillness. Then the reaction erupted all at once. The audience leapt to their feet, applause crashing like thunder. Cheers filled the space, raw and unrestrained. The singer stood frozen, his hands shaking, his chest rising rapidly as the reality of the moment washed over him. Tears finally spilled, tracing quiet paths down his face. He bowed his head, overwhelmed, whispering a thank you that was lost in the roar but deeply sincere. This wasn't just approval, it was validation. Years of doubt, of singing in obscurity, of being told to be realistic, all collapsed into this single, explosive response. Simon Cowell stood, not immediately, not dramatically, but deliberately. The gesture alone sent another wave of excitement through the crowd. He leaned toward the microphone, shaking his head slowly. "I honestly did not expect that," he said, his voice unusually soft. "That was one of the most emotional performances I've heard on this stage." The sincerity in his tone carried as much weight as the words themselves. The other judges followed, praising not just the voice, but the feeling behind it. One spoke about courage, another about authenticity. Their words blurred together for the singer, who could barely process what was happening. His knees felt weak, his heart felt too full. He smiled through tears, nodding, clutching the microphone like a lifeline. As the applause finally began to settle, the lights dimmed slightly, and the moment crystallized into memory. Backstage, his family would be crying. Somewhere back home, people who had never believed such a dream was possible would be watching in disbelief. But on that stage, in that instant, none of that mattered. What mattered was that he had been heard, truly heard. He walked off the stage slowly, still trembling, knowing something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't the end of a performance. It was the beginning of a new life, sparked by one song, one voice, and a moment that would echo far beyond the AGT lights.